Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. We are in the motherland. I'm in Nigeria. I've been here for about a week, and so we're going to do a reading catch-up. All the books I've read so far while being in Nigeria, we're going to do this every week. I'm actually really excited for that because I think I read so much more here than I do in Canada. Like, holy crap, Canada, the US, like I'm flying through these books, honey. And I have so many videos in the backlog, like everything I read in my 16-hour flight to here, everything I read in 1 week, a work week while in Canada. But this one I really want to get out because I actually want to keep track of my reading kind of habits as I'm in Nigeria. I also just extended my trip here in Nigeria. So if you're my employer, remote, mind your business. And this is going to be the first week of 6 where I recap everything I've read. 2.5 books so far, and I'm like, wow, who is she? In a week? A week? Me? I already did a recap of The Captive Prince on my Instagram and my TikTok. I'm going to recap it for you. We're not giving this book a rating. She's not seen a rating from me, and that is because the first book was so crude that I'm like, you know what? No, absolutely not. So she's not getting a rating. However, I did read all 3 books and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think the writing, Miss C.S. Packard, phenomenal, fantastic. I love these characters. I love Damon. He's a simp. I was hoping he would get his lick back. He did not, at least not in the way that I was hoping or thinking, but still just such a fantastic read. I hate that my sister was right and that I should have read it, but we both agree that it's a good thing I read it now, because if I had picked up this book when she told me to, my stomach would have been too weak. It was barely strong enough to stand that first book. That first book, I said, oh. You know what? We're gonna push through. Second of all, the bitch said that this book didn't have spice, because I told her, listen, I'm not in the mood for any kind of spice. No spice, no fucking spice. I've also never read spice, so I'm also not in the mood for new spice, just none. She said, don't worry, it's fade to black, bitch. This book had 12 pages of spice. I actually skipped because I was like I said, I'm not in the mood for spice, I'm not reading this. But the thing about C.S. Packard is that she uses all of her fucking real estates, okay? All of her real estate, it has character progression and character development and character relationship development. You cannot skip the spicing. So I skipped it and started reading, then I realized, oh my god, I'm missing really important context that was probably in the spicing that I just skipped. Went back and read the 12 pages of spice. It was so beautifully tender. The first one in book 2, oh my god, they're so cute. It was so achingly beautiful. My favorite thing about enemies to lovers, when it happens, I can sit back in book 1 and think, how the fuck are these 2 characters going to get together? And then by book 2 or book 3 or whatever it happens, I'm thinking, yeah, you did your damn thing. I love that feeling. I love that feeling of being like, how are you going to convince me? So many times you can already see it because the characters are already lusting after each other, and I'm sitting there being like, girl, who the hell do you think you're fooling? But in books like this, in books like The Bone Season that I read last month, I'm just like, you ate. You did in fact eat. Immediately jumped into book 3 to the point where I got so mad at my sister when she came to my room, and I was like, get the fuck out, I'm reading book 3, I don't want you here, I need to get through this book. And I read it in like less than 48 hours. Book 3 was also amazing. I've seen a lot of like discourse about this, that, and the third, and I was like, did y'all not read the book? Because that's not how I saw it at all. Then I also do want to say that to anyone who has a weak stomach, tread carefully. Tread carefully, tread carefully. You've been warned. That's why I'm not giving this a rating, because I don't want to diminish how that first book was, where it was like, wow. But also don't want to give it a low rating because I want to give like due service to how good her writing is. She built an amazing world. This is probably one of the few plot-driven books where she did it so well that like the character development did not suffer. It was so well done, and I want to do that service by just saying it was a fantastic read, still not giving it a rating. I heard that when she first released the book, she got a lot of hate, and honestly, I can see that, because if you only read that first book and you have to wait like a year plus to get the second book, I can understand why you're like, who is this person that would release something so gruesome? But also, another thing I said on my TikTok and my reels, I love that she stood on business, because like I said, so many of these authors, enemies to lovers, but you're already lusting after them in the first couple of chapters. That's not enemies to lovers, honey. Keep it in your pants, close your legs. That's not enemies to lovers. Like, so many times authors, they build a world and it's great, but authors who really do the damn thing, they push it a step further. And it doesn't mean that I'm always going to agree. Like the first book, wow. C.S. Packard pushed it. She said, we're going all the fucking way. You might not like it, that's the world I'm building. Sit your ass down and eat it, or get the fuck out of the kitchen. I can respect someone who does it that way. I might not agree with it, but I respect a bitch who stands on business. I respect you. Okay, she built this world. She said, this is what it is. She didn't try to apologize for it or make the characters over-explain it. This is the world, period. And what about it? I love that. And one day when I write a book, I want to build a world like that. This is my world. I'm going all the way. I'm gonna even take it a step further. Wow, I feel a slump coming. Usually when that happens, like when I finish a fantasy book and I'm like, oh my God, like I can't even imagine immersing myself into a new world. What am I gonna do? I immediately think about picking up a romance book, like a little like silly rom-com romance book, you know, but I was like, I don't want to then have to choose a romance book. And then what if the romance book is bad? Because so many times that happens, and that's gonna kind of help me not get into a reading slump, and then the romance book ends up being shit because in my life, in my reading life, I have to read Kiss so many fucking frogs to find my prince when it comes to romance. If I say, oh, I'm done reading this fantastic fantasy book, I don't want to get into a reading slump, let me jump into a romance book, I'm gonna keep jumping into romance books until I find 5 stars. I jump into a romance book, it's not 5 stars. I jump into another one, it's not 5 stars. 5 books down, I finally find my 5 stars, and then I enter a reading slump. It just ends up defeating the purpose. I'm not doing that. I know myself. I'm actually just going to jump into a fantasy book because I picked fantasy books from my TBR that you guys saw in the 2025 Q1. I'm just gonna jump into the fantasy books that I already brought that I knew I was going to like. And so, we got the Yasad Air. We picked her up. I've had this book for a while. This is like one of the few books that I've bought myself over the last year. I just saw the cover and it gave Ember in the Ashes vibes, and I was like, yes, a million times yes. And so this is about a girl who is the Yasad Heir, right on the nose, but her kingdom is now called like the Scorched Lands because the other kingdom basically razed it to the ground because they're the only kingdom that has magic. And so she's been in hiding for like, wow, almost 10 years. We meet her, she's like 20, 21, and she's caught the eye of one of the kingdom that was actually responsible for all of this. She's caught the eye of their heir, their prince, who is also the commander. He's basically now convinced her to compete in these trials that all of the kingdoms have every couple of years. They have these trials to basically pay homage to the creators of all of these lands, the people who brought magic into this land, even though now only her land has magic, but now it's been raised to the ground and they're actually killing people that have magic. But regardless, he's found her. He realizes that she has magic. He's decided not to kill her, even though that is what him and his people do. They kill people that have magic because he needs her for something. He also wants her to compete in these trials. Jumped into this book blind and was just like, wow, already obsessed. I already love the FMC. There are some things where it feels like, oh, that's so confusing. Like, what is the full story there? And like, in a way that doesn't sometimes feel natural, but then the author will always reveal it later on. And I'm like, okay, maybe she was saving it for then, but still having such a great time. I love the FMC. I think she's just cute, really funny, a huge trip. She's not like a lot of the other FMCs in that she's quite tall, she's buff, which makes sense because a lot of the times these FMCs know how to throw a knife and do all these things, but I feel like the way the author describes them, this is what I mean by not going all the way. Like, oh, you want them to be these buff, super agile people, but you describe them in a way that makes them seem like so petite and fragile, and it's like if she's gonna be a warrior, make her physically a warrior. And obviously every body is different, like every body reacts to exercise in a different way, but like if someone's a warrior, they have a warrior's body. So I love that she's tall, like me, and that she also has a warrior's physique, and she makes that known without it being weird. Like, she just happens to be someone who has trained a lot because she's been in hiding, so she's developed all of these skills, and so Miss Girl can do the damn thing. So enjoy that as well. The male MC is on the page. Obviously, he's the prince. I don't know if this book has romance. I have absolutely no idea. They hate each other. I'm like reading this book and I'm thinking, again, how are you going to convince me, Miss Sarah Hashem, that these two, if it has romance, like I said, I don't know, that these two are going to get together? Because his entire life, killing her people because they have magic, like hunting them down and killing them. Even though he himself, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but you know what I mean? Like, she has been running away because this man and his family like murdered her family, and now he has like kept going. Like, the people who escaped, he's still hunting them down. And so I'm like, listen, if this has romance, Miss Sarah, you have a tall order to convince me they're actually going to be together in a way that makes sense. Again, don't know if it has romance. Also, this is new for me. This book is the first in the series. The second book is out in like July. So I know I said that I was not going to request any arcs this year, but I've actually amended that. It is now I'm not going to request any arcs unless under excruciating circumstances. That is what I have changed that to, because apparently Bride by Ali Hazelwood is getting a sequel. If fucking Ninth House, Alex Stern, comes out this year, best believe I'm requesting an arc. Excruciating circumstances where I'm like, I will die. So I've amended it to that, but also have not requested any arcs this year. We're already midway through February, and I'm actually really proud of myself. But anyways, this is really new for me because I usually don't like to read unfinished series. I know that's kind of, problematic, like support authors, whatever. I don't like to read books, like series that aren't finished, especially since I took such a big break from reading because of school, like 8 years, that there's so many series I've missed. Like I have an entire backlog of books that I need to read. There are other things I could be doing instead of picking up a book that was just released 3 seconds ago. But regardless, I will absolutely be continuing this. It's already been 24 hours and I'm like, wow, I'm actually like quite far in. Let's see. Oh my gosh. I'm like already, I'm at 160, yep, 167. I love that I found the page literally so quickly. Like I don't like to dog ear my books. No, I don't like bookmarks. I just always forget where they are. Just close the book and then I just open it up and just kind of guess where I am. But I'm already at page 167, loving it so far. I think this is what This Woven Kingdom could have been. This Woven Kingdom by Tahari Mafe, if she didn't introduce that stupid love triangle, I think it could have been really great. This is what it could have been. This Woven Kingdom was a bit slower, which was fine. First book in a fantasy series. And then I sensed, oh, those last few pages, I said, ma'am, this better not be what I think it is. And it was. It was a love triangle. I said, bye, not me, but all the best. The Yasad Air. I think it's, I say Yasad because I feel like the J is silent, but it could also be Jasad Air. I don't know. But yeah, I really hope this book doesn't end up embarrassing me. Like when you read about a book and then it's like, oh, this was shit. So that's the downside to doing weekly catch-ups, because if in 2 weeks or in a week when I'm done this book and you see me next, you're like, I'm like, oh, this was shit. We're gonna pretend that this video never happened and I never raved about it. But obviously hoping that it's not shit, it's amazing, and that it's so good that I break my no arc rule and like request an arc. That would be the dream, because it comes out in July, it's already February. It would be around this time in the next couple of weeks that they start to send out arcs. So, but also, wow, this is like really new for me, reading a book that was recently released. Like I haven't done this in a long time. Like I do not read like recently released like fantasy books specifically. You're gonna need at least 2 books in the series for me to pick you up. And yet I've done this, so that's, I'm like, do I even really want to read the second book? Because then I have to wait for the 3rd book. What if it's a quartet? Then I gotta wait for the 4th book. I really hope this is not one of those fantasy books that has a cliffhanger. I haven't read one of those in a really long time. I don't do cliffhangers. Like this, The Captive Prince didn't have a cliffhanger. None of them actually this year that I've read. Like I think, is it gonna be problematic to say that I think cliffhangers are a little bit lazy? I think you could write a fantastic fantasy book without a fucking, like I don't think you need one. I'm thinking back at all my favorite fantasy books that were series, and none of them had cliffhangers. The Dance of Thieves, Alex Stern, none of them had cliffhangers. Like the book just kind of ended and you were pulled in to want to know what was going to happen next. The Stolen Air duology by Holly Black, I think that had a cliffhanger. Yeah, I did. But very rarely do I read I think very rarely nowadays do I read like even Brandon Sanderson, The Stormlight Archive, they don't have cliffhangers. They just kind of end and they've set the stage for the next book, and it's amazing that you're gonna want to pick it up and keep reading, but no cliffhanger. The Jasad Air, however you say it, please no cliffhangers. I forgot how much I hated those. Books don't have them anymore, because authors have realized that you can make people want to come back to your series without them. 1000%. That's just my opinion. But anyways, that's what I'm reading now. What am I gonna read next? Should I already pick what I'm gonna read next? Yeah, let's do that. 1 second. Also, forgot to say, wow, this is turning into a very chaotic video, but the Jasad Air took 2 years for book 2 to come out. So this came out like July 2023. Book 2 is coming out July 2025. I love it when an author takes their time to write a good book that makes me want to pick it up more. Okay, fine, the yearly releases, totally fine. Every writer has their, how they do their things, but when you take that long to like release a book, I'm like, oh, it's gonna be good. I'm sat. It's gonna be amazing. Fadington Blood, another book that is book 1 in the series. Anyways, okay, so besides these books, I also have book 5 in the Stormlight Archive on my Kindle, Wind and Truth, I think, and then I have book 2 in the Raven Cycle also on my Kindle. So if I finish these 4 in the next 5 weeks, then I still have a couple more on my Kindle. But anyways, Fadington Blood, the only knowledge I have of this book, I think it's Norse Vikings, and a lot of people have said, actually, 2 people that I saw talk about it that I really trust, at first were like, this is it, this is like the next book that everyone should pick up, and then they later came back like when they were done the book and were like, it's still good. I would just dim down that excitement that I kind of launched a couple of videos back, and I was like, oh, okay, interesting. Also, the first books, maybe I'll save this until like I'm done the other 3, which is Fireborn, no idea what this is about, but it has dragons. Bone Shard Daughter, very excited to read this. And then Immortal Dark by an author that I've never heard of. So this is gonna be a step into my New Year's goal of finding new authors. I'm excited about that. Anyways, that is my reading update. I will see you guys next week.